Okay, so let's unpack this. We talk a lot on this show about the future of work. We talk about the shiny stuff.
Right, the fun stuff.
Yeah, the new tools, the image generators, the whole leveling up narrative.
Yeah,
It's usually pretty exciting, right?
it is.
Feels like we're kids in a candy store with all this new tech.
Usually, yes.
Oh.
It's very much the look what this can do phase of the technology.
Yeah, exactly. But today, I want to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I want to start with a number that I read in the research packet this morning that actually, well, it made me put my coffee down.
I think I know exactly the one you're referencing.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a prediction. It felt like a countdown clock.
It definitely sets a very specific, very sober tone for our deep dive today.
41%. According to the World Economic Forum, 41% of companies plan to cut their workforce, reduce their headcount entirely, specifically because of AI, by the year 2030.
That is just, it's a staggering number, nearly half.
It is huge. And let's look at that date, right? 2030. That is not the distant future of flying cars and, I don't know, moon colonies.
No, it's right around the corner.
It is. If you are mid-career right now, that is literally a couple of performance reviews away.
Yeah.
If you are just starting out, that is before you even hit your stride.
Exactly. And that urgency is really the heartbeat of the deep dive today. We're looking at a stack of insights that argue we have moved past the adoption phase.
Right.
The conversation is no longer about, are you using AI or is your company exploring AI? That ship has sailed. The honeymoon is completely over.
The source material today puts it incredibly bluntly. It's not about if you use it. Everyone uses it. The source actually says, my mother uses it.
Mother test.
The mother test. And so the conversation has shifted to a completely new metric, something the source calls the AI delta.
The AI delta. It sounds technical, maybe a little intimidating for some people.
It does sound a bit corporate. But the mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly what that means for you. We aren't here to teach you a specific prompt for ChatGPT.
No.
We aren't here to tell you which image generator makes the best logos. We're here to talk about the actual math of your career.
We are talking about quantifying personal output.
Yes.
We're talking about the measurable gap between you without AI and you with AI.
And the best part of all this research, the source offers a solution. A tactical framework they call the Delta Diary. It's basically a way to control the narrative of your own productivity before your company decides to do the math for you.
Which, as we will see, they are already doing. They are running the numbers right now on everyone.
So we are going to break down the reality of that 41%. We're going to look at a fascinating, incredibly detailed case study involving a bioprinter.
A very cool case study.
Yes, a machine that actually prints biological material. And then we'll give you the toolkit to measure your own delta. So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So, Section 1, the context. We have to start with that statistic from the World Economic Forum.
We do.
41% of employers planning AI-linked workforce reductions by 2030. When you first read that in the brief, what was your initial reaction? Was it shock? Skepticism?
My first reaction was that it's a massive reality check on the timeline.
How so?
Well, for the last year or two, the corporate narrative around this stuff has been very soft.
How soft? Yeah.
It's been all about AI as a co-pilot or AI as an augment. AI will handle the drudgery so you can be creative and do the fun parts of your job.
Right, the whole humans-in-the-loop reassurance strategy. Robots aren't taking your job, they're just holding your flashlight.
Exactly. And while that is true to an extent on a technological level, this statistic from the WEF reveals the other side of the coin, the economic side.
The bottom line.
Right. Companies aren't just investing billions of dollars in these enterprise AI tools for the fun of it, or to make your life easier just out of the goodness of their hearts.
They are answerable to shareholders.
They are looking for efficiency. And ultimately, in the cold logic of a profit and loss sheet, efficiency almost always translates to doing the same amount of work, or even more work with fewer humans.
It's the ruthless math of business. It always comes back to that.
It does. And 2030 is the key variable here. It's close enough to be urgent. You absolutely cannot ignore it. But it's far enough away that you still have time to adapt.
Right. If the number was for 2025, we'd all be having a collective panic attack right now.
We'd be updating resumes in a cold sweat. But 2030 implies a transition period.
A window of opportunity.
A window. And the question for you, the listener, is what are you doing during that transition? Are you just waiting around to be part of the 41% that gets cut?
Or are you changing your underlying value proposition?
Exact.
Well, and this brings us to the mother test. I love this part of the source material because it's funny, but it's also just devastatingly accurate.
It's a great anchor for the reality we're in.
He also writes, quote, "Everyone uses AI. My mother uses AI."
It's such a brilliant little reality check.
And apparently, she still thinks the author fixes printers for a living, which is a hilarious tech support trope for anyone working in tech.
Oh yeah, everyone thinks you fix the Wi-Fi.
Exactly. But she's out there using large language models. She is prompting.
It's a humorous aside in the text, but it carries a very heavy implication for the modern workforce. Think about it.
Okay.
2 years ago, say late 2022 or early 2023, if you walked into a status meeting and said, "Hey guys, I used AI to draft this agenda," you were on the cutting edge.
You were the wizard. You had the magic wand, and everyone was amazed.
You were the absolute wizard. Now,
Yeah.
your mom is doing it, your intern is doing it, the guy making your coffee is doing it to write his screenplay.
It's ubiquitous.
It is. So usage alone is no longer a competitive advantage. That is the critical shift the source is trying to highlight. Merely using the tools doesn't save your job if the output itself doesn't change.
It's like using a word processor versus a typewriter, right?
Yeah.
Back in maybe 1985, knowing how to use a computer was a highly marketable skill.
Oh, absolutely.
You could put proficient in WordPerfect on a resume, and you would get hired just for that. Now, if you put that on a modern resume, people look at you like you're crazy. It's just expected. It's like breathing.
Precisely. If everyone has a superpower, nobody has a superpower. So the differentiation isn't the tool itself anymore. It's the result of the tool.
And that leads us directly to the core concept of this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
The adoption phase is completely over. The differentiation phase has officially begun.
The rules of the game have changed.
So let's talk about that differentiation. Section 2, the core concept, the AI delta. Let's define this properly for everyone because the source uses this term very specifically.
Right. The AI delta. The source defines it as a measurable gap. It is essentially an equation.
Okay, break that down.
On one side of the equation, you have your output without AI. That is your historical baseline.
The old you.
The old you. On the other side, you have your output with AI. The new you. The difference between those two actual numbers, that is your delta.
And we aren't talking about vibes here, are we?
Not at all.
We aren't talking about saying, oh, I feel more productive today,
Right.
or I am less stressed out by my inbox.
No, the source is relentlessly specific about this. We are talking about output per rupee, per dollar, per hour.
It's a unit of pure economics.
It is a hard, trackable metric.
And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, I think, for some people to hear.
It can be confronting.
Because we like to think of our jobs as qualitative. We say things like, well, I bring leadership to the team, or I bring out-of-the-box creativity, or I hold the institutional memory of how we do things here.
Which are all nice things to have.
But the source is arguing that the company is looking at you purely as an equation.
They always have. That is the harsh, unspoken truth of corporate employment. But now, the fundamental variables of that equation have changed overnight.
The source makes a really compelling argument here called the same person argument.
Yes.
Okay, lay that out for me. Because this is where I felt like the rubber really meets the road in the text.
So imagine a standard engineer. Let's call him David. Let's say David's salary is exactly $100,000.
Yeah, 100K.
That salary is fixed. The person is fixed. He has the same brain, the same years of experience, the same coffee habit, the same physical desk.
Same David, same salary. Nothing about him has changed.
Right. But if David, using his old traditional methodology, produces exactly one widget a week, his cost per widget is relatively high. The company is paying a lot for that one unit of output.
Because they're dividing his salary by those 52 widgets a year.
Exactly. Now, if that same David, working the same hours for the same fixed salary, uses an AI-assisted methodology to suddenly produce 3 widgets a week,
Wow.
the economic value of David has fundamentally transformed.
Because the cost per unit of his output drops drastically. Even though his actual salary stayed exactly the same, he just became 3 times more valuable without working 3 times more hours.
Exactly. And that shift, that increase in volume or speed or quality, that is the delta.
And the source gives us a warning here that actually gave me chills. It says, your company is already running this calculation on you.
They are.
It's the shift from the subjective traditional performance review, where your manager says, oh, Janet is so great to work with. She always brings donuts on Fridays, to hard, cold math. What is Janet's actual delta?
And in a world where 41% of these companies are actively looking to cut heads, the people with a high, provable, positive delta are the ones who stay.
they become the 10x employees we keep hearing about in tech circles.
Right. And the ones whose delta is effectively zero, meaning AI, didn't fundamentally change their output. They're just using it to tread water and do the exact same amount of work. They are the ones at severe risk.
Because if your delta is zero, you are just expensive.
You are a legacy cost at that point.
So to really understand this practically, we need to see it in action, because output can feel a bit abstract. We say widgets, but most of us listening don't actually manufacture physical widgets.
It's true. Knowledge work is harder to visualize.
But the source gives us this incredibly detailed case study that I think perfectly anchors this whole concept. Section 3. The bioprinter subassembly.
This part was fascinating to read, and I actually love that it is a hardware engineering example.
Why is that?
Because it shows this whole AI delta concept isn't just for copywriters generating blog posts or marketers writing sales emails.
Right.
This is heavy, physical, complex engineering with real-world constraints.
Right. So let's set the scene for the listener. The author shares a personal anecdote from their own career. They were tasked with designing a subassembly for a bioprinter.
Which is incredibly complex stuff.
Very. We are talking 14 different distinct parts. Tight tolerances, which basically means the physical pieces have to fit together absolutely perfectly, and a strict 3-week deadline.
A classic engineering pressure cooker scenario. And for those who don't work in manufacturing, a subassembly is essentially just a specific chunk of a much larger machine. But in a bioprinter, if that specific chunk fails, the biological material inside the machine dies. So the stakes for getting this right are extremely high.
High stakes, tight timeline. So let's walk through the old me scenario first, the traditional workflow the author used to use. How did that look? Because the source describes it as fairly painful.
Well, if you have ever worked in manufacturing or physical design, you know this exact pain. It is incredibly linear. It's completely sequential.
One step at a time.
Yes. The source describes 3 full weeks of just grinding it out.
And a lot of waiting around.
So much waiting. It's what project managers call the waterfall method. First, you do the CAD design, you sit at the computer and draw the physical geometry.
Okay.
Then you realize midway through that you need a very specific material for a certain gear, so you stop designing. You completely switch context, you write an email to a vendor, you wait 2 business days for a quote to come back.
It's constant start-stop, start-stop. You totally lose your state of flow.
Exactly. Then you finally get the quote back, but the material specs don't quite match your thermal requirements. So you have to go back into the CAD software, you redo the drawing to accommodate a different material, you send it back to the vendor. It is just an endless loop of friction.
And then there's the math involved. The source mentions tolerance stack-ups. Can you explain what that is for the listener who isn't a mechanical engineer?
Sure. So every physical part you manufacture has a tiny margin of error in its physical dimensions. Maybe it's 1/10 of a millimeter too thick or too thin off the factory line.
Okay, nobody's perfect.
Right. A stack-up analysis is when you mathematically add up all those possible errors across all 14 parts to make sure that even in the absolute worst-case scenario where everything is slightly off, the final assembly still fits together and functions.
And in the old way, you are doing that math manually.
Often, yes. In complex Excel spreadsheets, or sometimes just with a calculator and a notepad, it is tedious, high-focus, mind-numbing work.
And high risk.
Very high risk, because if you make one stupid arithmetic mistake in that spreadsheet, the physical machine jams and the product fails.
So lots of friction, lots of manual checking.
Yeah.
And the result of that whole 3-week grind.
According to the source, you might get exactly 1 design review if you were lucky. You barely cross the finish line with a working prototype.
A version 1.0.
Yeah, a version 1.0 product. It functions, it checks the boxes, but it's probably not elegant or fully optimized.
Okay, so that is the baseline. That is, you without AI. Now enter new me. The author takes on the exact same task, a bioprinter subassembly, 14 parts, 3 weeks, but this time applies an LLM to the actual workflow. What fundamentally changed here?
The biggest conceptual change was the shift from sequential processing to parallel processing. That is the absolute key phrase to remember here.
Unpack that for us. What does parallel processing look like practically for a human worker?
So instead of designing and then pausing to check materials and then designing again and then pausing to email vendors, the author used an LLM to do the boring peripheral stuff instantly in the background. He basically treated the AI like a dedicated team of highly specialized interns that work at the speed of light.
Give me the play-by-play of how he actually did that.
So he is working on the primary geometry in the CAD software. He hits a complex material question. Instead of stopping his flow to go Google it or dig through supplier catalogs or write an email, he feeds the mechanical parameters into the AI, and he just prompts it. Pre-screen material compatibility for these exact specs. Boom, the AI spits out the answer in seconds.
So zero Googling, zero digging through PDFs.
Exactly. Then he gets to the tolerance stack-ups we talked about.
A painful math.
The painful math. He exports the CAD dimensions and simply prompts the AI. Generate tolerance stack-ups for this assembly and flag any physical interferences. The math is done instantly.
Yeah.
The AI flags a potential problem area. He goes back and fixes it in the physical design immediately.
And what about all that vendor communication stuff, the email?
He prompts draft vendor specs. All the emails, the technical request documents, the requests for quotes, they are completely written by the AI while the engineer is literally still working on the CAD geometry.
So the AI is acting like a massive force multiplier here. It is handling all the peripheral cognitive load.
Precisely. It is clearing the debris off the road so the engineer can just focus entirely on driving the car. And the results of this shift were absolutely staggering.
Remind me, the original deadline was 3 weeks, right?
3 weeks. The new me delivered the final assembly in 11 days.
11 days. That is essentially half the time.
Less than half. But here is the real kicker, and I definitely don't want listeners to miss this nuance.
What's that?
It wasn't just faster. Because he finished the core design so early, he didn't just stop working and go play golf.
Right.
He used that extra time to go through 3 full design iterations instead of just 1.
Ah. So the actual quality of the final product went up significantly.
Yeah. Drastically. Because he suddenly had the time to fail. He had time to look at it and say, actually, version 1 works, but version 2 is a lot lighter and stronger, and version 3 is even cheaper to manufacture.
Whereas in the old sequential way, you just didn't have the time for a version 2. You barely got version 1 out the door before the deadline hit.
Right. And going back to our core equation, it's the same engineer, earning the exact same salary.
But the output is a massive leap, delivered in less than half the time, with 3 times the design iterations.
That is a massive AI delta. If you are the employer running this company and you see those 2 different outcomes side by side on a spreadsheet, well, the math just solves itself.
You absolutely keep the guy who gives you 3 premium iterations in 11 days. And you cut the guy who gives you 1 basic iteration in 21 days.
It really does become that simple. It's not just about saying, hey, look, he used AI. It's about saying he produced a tangibly better product significantly faster. That is the only distinction that matters to the bottom line.
Right. The actual LLM was just the lever he pulled. The delta is the real-world result.
Exactly.
But I know there are listeners tuning in right now thinking, okay, that is a really cool story. That's a great anecdote about one guy making a bioprinter.
Sure.
But I'm not a mechanical engineer. Does this math actually apply to me if I work in HR or corporate marketing or finance or law?
It is a totally valid question. We definitely can't build a whole economic theory on one guy's experience with a CAD program.
Right, which leads us perfectly into section 4, the data. Because the source actually brings the receipts here. This isn't just one guy's personal productivity hack.
No, the data backs this up on a macro level.
Let's break down the big 3 studies mentioned in the material.
Yeah.
We've got data from BCG, Boston Consulting Group, Harvard, and McKinsey. These are serious heavy hitters. They do not mess around when it comes to corporate productivity data.
They are the absolute gold standard for corporate research. And the numbers they found are remarkably consistent across all 3 separate studies.
Okay, let's look at the BCG and Harvard joint study first. What were they looking at?
They look specifically at management consultants. So these are quintessential knowledge workers, highly paid, highly educated, smart people whose entire job is basically thinking, synthesizing data, and writing reports.
What did the study find when they introduced AI?
They split these consultants into 2 control groups. One group used advanced AI tools, one group did not. The consultants using AI completed their tasks 25% faster on average.
25%. Okay, that tracks perfectly with the bioprinter timeline reduction. Speed is always the most obvious, immediate benefit.
It is.
25% faster is great. That gets you home for dinner on time instead of working late.
But the more important number to me, by far, is the quality metric they measured.
How do they measure quality?
They had the actual output from both groups graded by blind reviewers. So these were peers and industry experts who had no idea who wrote what or whether AI was involved at all.
Okay, totally blind grading.
Totally blind. And the AI-assisted group produced output that was graded 40% higher in quality.
40% higher quality. That is a massive jump.
Yeah.
How do you even define quality in management consulting?
Usually it's based on things like the depth of the strategic insight, the clarity of the overall strategy, how robust the core argument is, and the persuasiveness of the actual writing.
And think about what a 40% improvement means in real terms. If you are in school, a 40% jump is the difference between getting a C- and a solid A+.
Exactly. In a corporate setting, that is the difference between a totally average, replaceable employee and an absolute star performer who gets promoted.
And then the McKinsey study backed this exact same trend up.
Yes, very closely. McKinsey found that highly AI-proficient workers deliver approximately 40% more total value in knowledge tasks.
Again, we see that exact same number popping up. 40%, it really seems to be the magic benchmark for this current generation of AI tools.
It's the new baseline premium.
It's fascinating that you focus so heavily on the quality aspect of that data. Because usually when we talk about AI and automation on podcasts or in articles, everyone just talks about raw speed.
Always.
People boast, or I wrote this entire email in 10 seconds, or I generated this massive image in 5 seconds.
Right, but raw speed is ultimately just a commodity.
How so?
If absolutely everyone in your department is fast, then nobody is fast.
Right.
If I can write a summary email in 10 seconds, and you can write it in 10 seconds, our value is equal. Speed just becomes the new expected baseline.
It's table stakes.
Exactly. Quality is the true long-term differentiator. Look back at the bioprinter example. The raw speed of the LLM is what allowed for more design iterations, which ultimately led to a much better quality final product.
It enabled the quality.
Yes. In the Harvard consulting example, the AI likely handled all the tedious data synthesis and report structuring, which allowed the human consultant to focus entirely on generating a deeper, more profound strategic insight.
So the very definition of a knowledge task is being fundamentally redefined right now. It's no longer about your ability to simply gather and format information.
Not at all.
It's entirely about what unique insight you can extract from it.
Exactly. The baseline threshold for acceptable corporate work has just abruptly moved up by 40% across the board.
That is the scary part.
It is terrifying if you aren't paying attention. If you are still operating at the old me baseline level of output, you are now effectively underperforming your peers by a massive 40% margin, even if the actual quality of your work hasn't dropped at all.
Because the bar just got raised into the stratosphere while you weren't looking.
The bar is completely out of sight now.
Okay, so let's pause and do a quick recap of where we are for the listener. We have established the macro context, the 41% cuts coming by 2030.
Right?
We've defined the core concept, the AI delta, which is your output per dollar. We have seen the proof with the bioprinter anecdote and the Harvard data.
We have the receipts.
Now, if I'm listening to this, I am probably thinking, okay, I definitely do not want to be in that 41% group. I want to be the bioprinter guy. But how do I actually calculate this for my own weird, specific job? How do I prove my delta to my boss?
This is exactly where we get highly tactical. We stop talking about economic theory and we start talking about daily action.
Section 5. The framework.
Yes. The source calls this the Delta Diary.
I love a good actionable framework. And the source explicitly says in the text, steal this for your next performance review. This is fundamentally a self-defense mechanism.
It absolutely is self-defense. It's about taking proactive control. Instead of sitting there waiting for your boss to randomly ask, hey, what have you actually done lately? You are actively building a case file. You are building a bulletproof portfolio of your own efficiency.
So walk us through how to actually do it. It's a very clear 4-step process. What is step 1?
Step 1 is crucial. Pick one metric that you completely own.
Just one single metric.
Just one. The biggest mistake people make when they try to adopt these tools is trying to AI-fy their entire job all at once.
Oh yeah, you see that all the time.
People say, I'm going to use AI for absolutely everything starting Monday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon, they are completely overwhelmed, their workflow is broken, and they just quit and go back to the old way.
It's too much change at once. It fails.
It always fails. You need narrow focus.
The source gives a few examples like tracking tickets closed or design shipped or coding errors caught.
Right. The key is that it has to be quantifiable. It cannot be a soft metric like, I want to improve my team's overall morale.
Which is important, but you can't graph it easily.
Exactly. It's not a delta metric. It needs to be a hard number. Because if you can't count it, you cannot reliably track the delta.
Okay, so I pick my one hard metric. Let's say I work in frontline customer support, and I choose to track tickets resolved per day. That's my metric. What is step 2?
Step 2, add one specific AI tool to that exact workflow.
Again, just one.
Again, specificity is key here. Don't just vaguely say, oh, I'll start using ChatGPT. You need to identify the exact friction point in your process.
Okay.
Is the friction taking too long to read and understand the customer's initial complaint? Is it in manually typing out the polite response? Is it in searching the back-end knowledge base for the technical answer? You have to find the specific tool that solves that specific bottleneck.
So for my hypothetical support tickets, maybe the friction is reading long emails.
Okay.
So I use a tool that instantly summarizes the customer's rambling complaint and automatically drafts 3 suggested responses.
Perfect. That is your new variable. You have your historical control, which is your old way of working, and your new variable, the specific tool. Now you move to step 3. Track the data for 60 days.
Why specifically 60 days? Why not just try it for a week and see how it goes?
Because a week is just a statistical fluke.
Fair.
A week is just, hey, I had a lot of coffee this week and felt really focused, or hey, it was just a generally slow week for incoming tickets. 60 days establishes a real, undeniable trend.
It's essentially an entire financial quarter.
It shows real consistency. And you must track both the before and the after. You need that historical baseline data to mathematically prove the delta exists.
So you need to be able to say, in January, I averaged 20 tickets resolved a day. In March, after fully implementing Tool X, my rolling average jumped to 35 tickets a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to highlight that sharp contrast, which brings us directly to step 4, the most important step. Bring the receipts.
Bring the receipts.
Data beats opinion every single time. Always. When you eventually walk into that annual performance review, you aren't just sitting there saying, hey, boss, I worked really, really hard this year.
You aren't just appealing to their emotions or hoping they remember that one time you stayed late.
Exactly. You are sliding a piece of paper across the desk and saying, here is a graph of my output. Here is my exact output per dollar. I have systematically increased my personal efficiency by 75% using this specific methodology.
That is a very, very hard argument for a manager to argue against.
It forces the corporate math to work in your favor instead of against you.
And the source emphasizes something really interesting here that I want to highlight. It says, no certifications, no transformation roadmap.
The anti-credentialism stance, I found that incredibly refreshing to read.
It is, right, because we are currently so obsessed with getting certificates for everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone wants to put certified prompt engineer in their LinkedIn bio. But the source is basically saying nobody actually cares about your certificate.
Ouch.
But it's true.
It is entirely true. Your boss does not care if you paid for a fancy certificate. They do not care if you spent your weekend watching 40 hours of YouTube tutorials on prompt optimization.
They only care if the actual work got done better and if it got done faster.
Exactly. It drastically democratizes career growth, if you think about it.
It really does. You don't need to wait for permission from the HR department to start a personal Delta diary. You don't need to beg for a massive budget approval just to change your own daily workflow.
Exactly. You do not need to sit around waiting for the grand corporate AI strategy to slowly trickle down from the executive board.
Because frankly, by the time those top-down corporate strategies finally reach your desk, they're usually outdated, or they are just incredibly clunky and bureaucratic.
You can quietly build your own highly effective strategy right at your desk, starting tomorrow morning.
That fundamentally empowers the individual worker. It changes the psychological dynamic from, oh man, I really hope they don't fire me in the next round of cuts, to look at this data showing exactly how valuable I am.
It transforms you from being viewed as a basic cost center into a provable value multiplier for the company.
So we've covered the diary framework. But I want to zoom out a bit to the synthesis of all this information, Section 6. Because reading this, it feels like a fundamental, historic shift in how we actually value human labor.
It absolutely is. We are rapidly moving toward what the source calls the only metric that matters.
Which is, of course, the delta.
Think about the history of office work. For a very long time, the primary metric of value was simply hours. Did you punch in on time? Did you stay late? It was all about face time in the office.
The classic first one in, last one out mentality, the absolute martyrdom of the office desk.
Exactly. Then, maybe in the last couple of decades, it shifted slightly to performance and KPIs, But that was still often heavily subjective.
Mm.
Office politics still played a massive role in who got ahead.
Oh, for sure. It was about who you knew, how well you presented in meetings, did the VP like your golf swing.
Now, with the rapid rise of the AI delta, we are shifting aggressively toward pure, unfiltered output efficiency.
It's ruthless in a way.
It is. It strips away the human element of perceived effort, but it is also incredibly clarifying. The old question of, did you work hard today, is quickly becoming totally irrelevant.
The only question that remains is, what was your delta today?
It reminds me directly of the bioprinter guy from the case study. He got all the work done in 11 days.
Right.
In the old corporate world, a traditional boss might see him packing up his bag and say, "Hey, why are you leaving at 3 p.m.? You have a major 3-week deadline coming up. You should be sitting right here, grinding it out with the rest of the team."
Right. Because in that old world, finishing early artificially looked like you were slacking off, you weren't showing enough effort.
But in this new world, finishing in half the time while delivering 3 times the quality iterations, that makes you an absolute genius. It completely flips the script on what laziness looks like.
Efficient laziness is now a highly sought-after corporate virtue.
Exactly.
But there's a major psychological shift that has to happen here for the average listener, because hearing that 41% workforce reduction stat is objectively scary. It breeds a lot of anxiety and fear.
Fear is the completely natural human reaction to that kind of structural threat. But maintaining a Delta diary is the practical antidote to that exact fear.
Because it gives you control back.
Yes. Workplace fear almost always comes from a total lack of control. You sit there wondering, will they cut my department next? You just don't know. You feel like a passive victim waiting for the 41% axe to fall.
But if you actively track your own delta, you regain agency. You mathematically know your own value. You hold the data in your hands.
And you mentioned something crucial earlier, the same engineer, same salary concept.
Yeah.
The source heavily implies that this is a strictly temporary state of affairs.
It has to be, right? The economics of it just demand a correction eventually.
Economics always balance out in the end. Right now, in this weird transitional phase we're in, you might have the exact same salary as the person sitting at the desk next to you who completely refuses to use AI.
You are getting paid 100K, they are getting paid 100K.
Right. But your provable output is double or triple theirs. Eventually, the market forces dictate that one of 2 things must happen. Either you get a massive raise to reflect your new output,
Or they get let go because their cost per output is no longer competitive.
exactly. Or the third option, you take your carefully documented, proven Delta diary to a direct competitor who actually understands the math and will happily pay you a premium for it.
Your delta literally becomes your new resume.
It's your portfolio. You can confidently walk into an interview and say, I can objectively increase this role's output by 40% because I have a proven systematic methodology.
That is incredibly valuable leverage to have in a job negotiation. It's portable, undeniable value.
So it's not just about defensive survival anymore. It is about massive career opportunity.
It's about consciously positioning yourself on the correct side of this incoming divide. The 41% headcount cut is coming specifically for the old me traditional workflows.
Yes.
The new me parallel workflows are where all the future growth and compensation will be concentrated.
Absolutely.
I want to circle back really quickly to something the source said right near the beginning of the text. My mother uses AI.
The mother test again.
Yeah, the mother test, it's a funny anecdote, but it also highlights a really critical point about accessibility. The barrier to entry here is essentially 0.
It is absolutely 0.
Which means, quite frankly, there is no valid excuse for not starting this.
That is the tough love portion of this entire deep dive. If the barrier to entry is literally 0, if these powerful tools are mostly free or incredibly cheap, and they operate entirely on natural conversational language so you don't even need to know how to code,
Right.
and the potential productivity gain is 40% or more, why on earth aren't you aggressively doing this right now?
I think maybe people just don't know where to actually start. They look at the landscape and they just get immediately overwhelmed by all the noise.
And that is exactly why the Delta Diary framework is so incredibly smart. It completely strips away all that overwhelm.
It forces constraints.
Yes. It says, just pick one metric. Pick one single tool. Don't try to boil the entire ocean on your first day. Just boil 1 cup of tea.
Just boil 1 cup of tea. I really like that analogy. And I imagine once you see the first real result, once you definitively prove that you saved 5 hours of grunt work this week, or you instantly caught 10 critical errors that would have otherwise slipped through to the client, it becomes highly addictive.
It absolutely does. It gamifies your own job. You start eagerly looking for other hidden deltas everywhere. You start asking, where else can I apply this exact same leverage?
And suddenly, almost without realizing it, you are completely transforming your entire professional role, one piece at a time.
It's a purely iterative process. Just like the engineer iterating on the bioprinter design, you are actively iterating on your own career trajectory.
You are the bioprinter subassembly in this metaphor. You are optimizing your own internal operating system.
That's a deep way to look at it, but it's very true.
Okay, we are getting close to the end of our time here, but before we wrap, I want to leave the listener with the final direct challenge from the source material. It poses a very pointed question.
It does, and I would genuinely ask every single person listening to actually pause what they're doing and think hard about this. Don't just let it wash over you while you're driving or doing the dishes.
The specific question is, what is the one metric in your current role where AI has made the biggest, most measurable difference?
And the immediate follow-up to that is, which specific tool made that difference happen?
If you are listening to this and you cannot answer that question instantly in your head right now, if you are kind of stuttering and drawing a blank,
then you have a lot of urgent work to do.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, your company is currently sitting in a boardroom trying to answer that exact question for you.
And you really might not like the answer they come up with if you haven't actively prepared your own data to counter it. That is the harsh reality check of this whole deep dive. That 41% statistic from the WEF is the sound of the clock loudly ticking in the background.
And the Delta Diary framework is your only practical way to stop that clock.
Or at the very least, to make absolutely sure you are the one holding the stopwatch when the time comes.
I love that framing.
So here is our final provocative thought to leave you with today. We talked a lot about the same engineer, same salary dynamic.
Right.
But the real question is, for how long does that hold true? The source tells us to stay tuned to your own delta. We would take it a step further and say, don't just stay tuned to it passively. Actively drive it.
Start building the diary today. Tomorrow morning, get the actual receipts.
Because the corporate math is happening in the background whether you choose to participate in the calculation or not.
It is entirely inevitable.
Well, thank you for diving into all this data with us. This was definitely a heavier, more sober topic than usual, but hopefully it's a deeply empowering one once you have the framework.
It was always a pleasure to unpack this kind of research.
We will see you on the next Don't Dive.
Goodbye, everyone.
Wait, actually, before we completely sign off, I just realized something glaring that we completely glossed over.
What's that?
We spent all this time talking about the bioprinter case study, the 14 parts, the 11 days, the tolerance stack-ups.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually talk about the bioprinter itself as a machine.
Right.
What exactly does a bioprinter print?
Well, the source text didn't explicitly specify what his particular machine was making, but knowing the cutting edge of that medical industry, it's almost certainly printing living human tissue.
Wow.
Skin grafts for burn victims, maybe vascular networks, eventually fully functioning transplant organs.
So, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
We are using artificial intelligence to help build faster, better mechanical machines that literally print human body parts.
That is exactly what is happening. Yeah.
Now, that is a whole other existential deep dive right there.
It really is. The definition of output gets very weird when the output is biological life.
Okay, now I am actually a little terrified, but also incredibly excited about the future. All right, that is really it for us today. Stay curious out there, stay highly productive, and for your own sake, watch your delta.
Stay tuned.
Actually, you know what? Let's break down that mother test just a little bit more before we fully wrap, because I feel like we breezed past the humor of it, but maybe missed a deeper layer.
Oh, sure. The mother test.
The source says, she still thinks I fix printers.
Yeah, it's a very classic, funny, generational gap.
But think about the profound irony in that statement. The author is literally a highly specialized mechanical engineer designing complex bioprinters machines that print biological life.
Right.
And his mom genuinely thinks he fixes, like, annoying paper jams in a plastic cannon desk jet at an office somewhere.
There is a beautiful, hilarious irony there. But it also speaks to something deeper about how totally invisible modern knowledge work really is.
How so? Invisible in what way?
Well, engineering is often totally invisible to the end user, but AI makes the actual process of the work even more invisible to managers.
Expand on that.
Think about it. If you are sitting at your office computer for 3 long weeks, sweating over incredibly complex CAD drawings, you physically look busy.
Right, you look like a hard worker.
You look like you are putting in the effort. Your boss walks by your cubicle, sees the deeply furrowed brow, hears the mouse clicking furiously, sees you looking stressed.
The furrowed brow equals high productivity in the old corporate world.
Exactly. But if you pivot to the new me parallel workflow, and you finish the entire project in 11 days, and you used an LLM agent to rapidly generate all those specs in the background, what does that actually look like from the outside looking in?
It probably looks like you aren't doing much.
It might look like you're just casually reading a screen or staring out the window while the parallel background processes run their course.
That brings up a massive incoming cultural problem of these companies.
Yeah.
The eternal battle of mere busyness versus actual productivity.
Exactly. The AI delta completely challenges the visual aesthetic of hard work. High delta work might actually look lazy to a traditional old-school manager.
They walk by and say, "Why aren't you typing furiously?"
And you say, well, because the AI is writing the boilerplate code right now, I'm just reviewing it.
And they say, "Why aren't you stressed out about the deadline?"
And you reply, because the AI already did the complex math and verified the tolerances.
So part of the whole Delta Diary strategy isn't just mathematically proving your numbers. It's actively educating your leadership team on what the new version of work actually looks like physically.
100%. You have to gently retrain them to look exclusively at the final output, not the visual activity at the desk. Because if they continue to judge you strictly on visible activity, the person who is struggling manually with the massive Excel spreadsheet looks like the harder worker.
They look like the office hero putting out fires.
But the person quietly directing the AI is the vastly smarter, more valuable worker.
And when 2030 rolls around, the smart worker is the one who survives the cuts. The visibly hard worker who rigidly refuses to adapt. They just become another statistic in that 41%.
Man, every single time we peel back a layer of this topic, the implications just get more intense.
It's the nature of the beast with this technology. It touches everything.
It really does.
Okay, let's pivot back to the big three data sets for a second, because I want to be crystal clear. We mentioned McKinsey and their focus on knowledge tasks. I want to firmly define that term for the listener. What exactly counts as a knowledge task in this context?
It is a fairly broad academic term, but generally speaking, it's any task that requires active cognitive processing, synthesis, or creation, rather than purely physical manipulation or repetitive data entry.
Give me some concrete examples.
Coding software, writing marketing copy, analyzing complex financial data, developing corporate strategy, graphic design, legal contract review, medical diagnosis.
So basically almost all modern white-collar office jobs.
Almost entirely, yes. And that is exactly why this specific technological shift is so uniquely disruptive.
Because automation historically targeted something else.
Right. Historically, for the last 100 years, automation was strictly for the factory floor. It was physical robots building cars faster. It was blue-collar automation.
Replacing muscles.
Replacing muscle. Now, for the very first time, we're seeing the mass automation of the mind.
We have robots building logical arguments.
Yes, robots building legal arguments. Robots building business strategy. If you are a corporate lawyer and an AI tool can review a 50-page vendor contract 40% faster than you can, and it consistently catches 40% more legal loopholes, that is your new baseline delta.
And if you are the senior lawyer who stubbornly refuses to use it.
You are basically malpractice waiting to happen.
Whoa, that is a heavy statement.
It's a serious ethical thought experiment. If a proven, reliable tool exists that mathematically makes you 40% better at your job and you refuse to use it purely out of stubborn pride or old habits, are you truly serving your client's best interests?
That is an entirely new ethical dimension I hadn't even considered. The delta isn't just about selfishly keeping your own job. It's actually about your fundamental professional responsibility to the work.
I strongly think so. Think about it in a medical context. If a new AI diagnostic tool exists that verifiably catches 40% more early-stage tumors on an MRI, and a veteran doctor outright refuses to use it because they say, hey, I just trust my gut instinct,
We would absolutely call that medical negligence.
it's total negligence. So why should it be viewed any differently in structural engineering or in corporate finance or in management consulting? If you have the accessible means to be 40% more accurate, you owe it to the actual work to be 40% more accurate.
The standard of care has shifted. The source explicitly said it's becoming the only metric that matters. Maybe that bold claim applies ethically just as much as it applies economically.
I really think it does. The ethical and the economic are merging here.
Okay, I want to get extremely practical on the Delta Diary steps again.
Yeah.
Step 4 was Bring the receipts. The source says data beats opinion.
Always.
But how do you actually physically present this to a superior? Like literally, what does the slide look like in the meeting?
I have actually seen this done really well in practice. Keep it incredibly simple. Use a basic split-screen slide.
Okay.
On the left side, put your header, previous benchmark. List the old metrics, the time it took, the manual cost, the historical error rate. Maybe use red text for the bad numbers.
Make the pain visible.
Yes. On the right side, the header is current performance with AI integration. List the exact new numbers in bright green. And then, in massive bold text right in the middle of the slide, the delta.
Plus 25% speed. Plus 40% quality.
Exactly. And then, crucially, this is the pro move, you add a footer at the bottom of the slide, projected annual business impact.
Ooh. You extrapolate the small win into a massive yearly win.
Yes. You have to do the corporate math for them. You say, if I save 10 hours on this one specific project this week, that extrapolates out to 500 hours saved over the calendar year. That equals $50,000 in billable time entirely saved by this new workflow.
You translate your personal efficiency into their preferred language, which is dollars.
It is the only language executives truly speak fluently. If you walk in and just say, hey, boss, I saved a lot of time this week, their immediate internal thought is, great, I will give you more work to do. But if you walk in and say, I mathematically saved this department $50,000 this year without impacting quality, their immediate thought is, we need to promote this person before they leave for a competitor.
And going back to the source's point, you absolutely do not need a fancy transformation roadmap from McKinsey to do that presentation. You literally just need Microsoft Excel in 5 minutes.
Just a basic spreadsheet and a little bit of professional confidence.
I really do love that no certifications point. It feels like such a direct, necessary jab at the whole LinkedIn credential economy we live in right now.
It totally is, and it is entirely valid criticism. We have seen this massive explosion of online courses selling you the dream of becoming an AI whisperer or taking a $1,000 masterclass in prompt engineering.
Right. Everyone wants to sell you the shovel and the gold rush.
Exactly. And sure, continuous education is generally good. But in a technological field that is moving this incredibly fast, the PDF certificate you get is functionally obsolete by the time you even hit print. The underlying AI models completely change every few weeks.
So the only lasting proof is the pudding itself.
The only proof that matters is the real-world delta. Did you successfully ship the complex bioprinter assembly in 11 days? Yes or no?
If the answer is yes, I honestly do not care if you learned how to do it on a free YouTube video, or if you learned it at Harvard Business School, or if you just sat there and figured it out by messing around in the dark.
Exactly. Provable results are the ultimate, undeniable credential in this new economy.
But, thinking about all this massive shift, it feels like it puts an immense amount of solo pressure on the individual worker. The quote was, your company is calculating this on you.
It is a lot of pressure.
It feels a bit, lonely. You are an army of one fighting the algorithm.
It can definitely feel isolating. But I would argue it is also incredibly liberating.
Liberating how?
In the old, rigid corporate structure, you as an individual were very often held back by the slow speed of the surrounding system. You would say, well, I can't go any faster because the legal department is slow. Or I am stuck waiting on budget approval from finance. Or I really need a junior engineer to help me draft these specs, but we don't have the headcount.
You were bound by the friction of the bureaucracy.
Right. The AI delta actively allows you to completely bypass a huge amount of that institutional friction. Look at the bioprinter engineer again. He was generating all the complex vendor specs himself instantly instead of waiting a week for a dedicated purchasing manager to do it.
Right. It allows the individual solo contributor to suddenly have the massive sweeping impact of an entire full-scale team.
That is an incredibly powerful place to be. It is the rapid rise of the super employee. You literally become a one-person, highly efficient department.
But wait, that raises a huge structural question. If the senior guy with an AI agent can effectively do the grunt work of 3 junior employees simultaneously, do companies ever hire junior employees anymore?
That is the million-dollar industry-defining question right there. That is the real structural danger of this 2030 timeline.
Because if we aggressively automate all the basic entry-level tasks, the initial drafting, the basic internet research, the simple summary writing, how do the junior people ever learn the ropes?
They don't. Those entry-level tasks used to be the essential training wheels of a white-collar career. You learned how a contract works by painfully drafting 100 terrible ones.
They completely miss out on the old me experience of grinding it out for 3 weeks and learning from their manual mistakes. They don't learn the underlying pain of the process.
They might not. So the only viable delta for a new junior employee entering the workforce now might actually be their learning velocity.
Learning velocity, define that.
It's not about how fast you can type or research anymore. It's about how incredibly fast you can absorb the complex output generated by the AI and fundamentally understand exactly why it is correct or incorrect.
So the core entry-level skill abruptly shifts from doing the actual physical generation to actively auditing the generation.
Yes. You essentially skip being the junior writer, and you have to instantly become the editor-in-chief of your AI tools.
But being an effective editor requires deep structural critical thinking, which brings us all the way back to the bioprinter anecdote again. The human engineer didn't just blindly, foolishly accept the AI's complex tolerance stack-up math.
No, absolutely not. He had to already know enough underlying mechanical engineering theory to verify that those specific numbers were physically safe and accurate. If he didn't know the math, and he just trusted the hallucinating AI and the machine exploded in the lab, that is a massive, catastrophic negative delta.
A very, very expensive negative delta.
So deep domain expertise still entirely matters, probably more than ever.
The AI simply amplifies the existing human expertise. It absolutely does not replace the fundamental need for it.
Right. You mathematically cannot amplify zero. If you don't know anything, the AI just helps you make terrible decisions much faster.
That is such a crucial distinction for the listener. The author of the case study was an experienced, trained engineer actively designing a bioprinter. He was not just some random guy off the street asking ChatGPT to suddenly invent a complex medical device for him.
Correct. The same engineer part of the core equation is absolutely vital. You desperately need that solid bedrock foundation of real knowledge to build your new delta on top of.
So the real takeaway for young professionals is definitely do not skip learning the boring basics. Deeply learn your actual trade. Understand the underlying principles. And then once you have that bedrock, apply the AI rocket fuel to it.
Exactly.
I am looking down at the WES statistic on my notes one more time. 2030, that is roughly 5 years away, give or take, depending on exactly when someone is listening to this archive. 5 years is practically an eternity in the tech world.
It's several lifetimes in AI development speed.
Think about where this exact technology was just 5 short years ago.
It was basically non-existent for the average consumer. Early models like GPT-2 were barely coherent novelties.
So trying to imagine where the baseline capabilities will be in 2030 is mind-boggling. The Delta Premium we're talking about today, that 40% jump might easily be a 400% jump by then.
It very likely will be, which is exactly why starting the diary process right now, today, is so incredibly critical. You need to proactively build the mental muscle of continuous adaptation.
You definitely cannot wake up on January 1st, 2029 and suddenly decide to start tracking your individual output.
No, you will be vastly too far behind the compounding curve by then.
It'll just be a rounding error in someone else's workforce reduction spreadsheet.
It is dark, but it is meant to be highly motivating.
And I think it is. Okay, let's tightly wrap this entire section with one final, highly practical thought on implementing the Delta Diary. Step 2 was add one AI tool. I feel like this is exactly where the vast majority of people get permanently stuck.
They absolutely do. They experience massive paralysis by analysis. They open Twitter or LinkedIn and see thousands of different shiny new tools being launched every single day.
Does it actually matter which specific app or platform they pick?
Honestly, not really. The individual tools will change every week. Startups rise and fall. It only matters that you pick a tool that directly addresses a specific verb in your daily workflow.
A verb. I like that. Explain what you mean by addressing a verb.
Verbs like rating, summarizing, coding, scheduling, designing, researching. You need to brutally deconstruct your daily job into its component verbs. Identify the verb that you currently spend the most tedious, unrewarding time on.
And then just find the best current tool that specifically automates that one painful verb.
Exactly. Don't go out looking for a magical omnibus tool that vaguely does my whole job for me. That doesn't exist. Look for a focus tool that strictly does this one specific verb.
Automate the slow verbs. Keep the high-value strategic verbs entirely for yourself.
That is the pure essence of maximizing the delta.
That is incredibly actionable advice. Automate the slow verbs. I'm literally writing that down in my notes right now.
It's the best way to start without getting totally overwhelmed.
All right. I think we have successfully squeezed every single drop of useful juice out of this particular research lemon today.
I think we really have covered it all.
To give one final rapid-fire recap for the listener who may be zoned out in traffic, 41% of major companies are actively planning to cut heads by 2030 due to AI efficiencies. Your only real professional safety net is your personal AI delta, the measurable economic gap between you with and you without these tools.
Right.
And you must actively prove it using the Delta Diary framework. Pick one metric, apply one specific tool to a slow verb, track the data strictly for 60 days, and explicitly bring the mathematical receipts to your boss.
Well, I couldn't have possibly summarized the entire deep dive better myself.
And always remember the bioprinter guy. Strive to be the new me. Parallel process your boring tasks. Iterate relentlessly on the high-value stuff, and just deliver undeniable quality.
And definitely keep an eye out for your mom. She is actively coming for your corporate job.
She is already there.
Right.
She's prompting absolute circles around all of us while we're still debating which tool to use.
She really is.
All right, for real this time. Thank you so much for listening to The Deep Dive. Go immediately calculate your delta. We will see you next time.